So our next speaker is Kim Watson. She is the CEO of Alliance. She has 25 years of experience as a consultant and project manager, identifying, building, and managing teams for others. Her natural curiosity on the formation and mobilization of best teams prompted her to study people. And let me just say, from a personal standpoint, if you ever take a culture index and work with Kim, it's like you're talking to a psychic, because she definitely understands people. She is awesome. She definitely understands me very well, which is why I'm so happy that she said yes when I asked her to be here today. Along with her many successful years of corporate, nonprofit, and governmental consulting, she completed a master's and a PhD in performance psychology. She is also a certified project manager professional and a Six Sigma Green Belt professional. She takes pride in being a champion of people and processes so that organizations, those entrusted to sustain them, and those who benefit from them are successful. Please welcome Kim.
I remember sitting in my kinesiology class, right? And the athletic trainer he goes, you know what, if you don't ever get into shape, nobody's going to take you seriously. And I'm like, that's just mean, right? Like, to say that to me. But you should see the definition in my brain, right? I may not be physically an athlete, but I got this, right? So it's kind of funny when Becca asked me to do this. I'm like, I always feel like I'm kind of that imposter talking to people that do what I would love to be doing, but I do something different, and we're all needed in this world, are we not? And so true. Okay. So I'm really going to kind of hone in. Yes, I do a lot of stuff. I learned so much from you. Thank you, Ken, for sharing. I have been working with great teams for a long time, almost 40 years now. I really need to update my bio, but it's been a long time. And I've come along, I work with athletic teams, so like collegiate sports teams and athletic directors, but most of what I do is in corporate America. And I come alongside leaders. I help them develop great teams by putting together a team to execute on a great project, okay? So I'm going to really dig more into the conflict time side, because Ken spoke a lot about some great concepts regarding leadership in general, and I'm going to dig into this. We know that conflict is inherent in sports. You know that, right? That's what competition is. You want to beat the other people, right? That's sports, okay? So it's great when it's us against them. Where it's a problem is when it's us against us. Do you agree with that? That's what conflict is, okay? So I have a question for you. I'm going to use an acronym. I love acronyms because I'm a teacher, right? So that's what I do. But owning, our outlook matters greatly. When we go into conflict, what we're thinking about conflict and how we frame our outlook matters greatly, right? What your wiring is matters greatly. And then I'm going to give you some next steps, some just practical application stuff, okay? So, question for you. How comfortable are you with discomfort? Seriously. Answer me here. 8? It depends on the discomfort, right? It's hard, right? It depends on what that... Some people are more comfortable stepping into discomfort, and some people are not. I can tell you, that's where the juice happens in a team, though. It's where the juice happens. You guys are trainers. If somebody is working out and they aren't hitting that level where they're having to push past what's comfortable, are they making progress? Okay, so how comfortable are you with discomfort? Your outlook in conflict is going to matter on that, right? You guys know what friction is, right? Do you know that friction is what moves your car forward? It's that rubber grabbing the asphalt that moves the car forward. So what I would tell you is, if your organization is always conflict-free, you're probably not making any progress. So our outlook on conflict matters greatly, doesn't it? Because a lot of times we're like, oh, we got conflict, that's a bad thing. Conflict in and of itself has no valence. It's not positive or negative. Conflict is conflict. But how and why you conflict matters. You got it? Do you see what I'm saying? So our outlook on conflict matters greatly. So the goal is not no conflict. Right? Are you hearing me on this? The goal is to conflict well, right? And that's a little different, because a lot of people think that conflict is a bad thing. No, it's not. That's pushing past. That's the Belgian horses that are straining against that incredible weight. It just makes them more powerful. And as he said, when you got two of them doing it together and doing it well, you're even more powerful, right? So real quick little academic understanding of conflict, right? there's processes in conflict. I don't know if you know that. If you ever take a step back, you're going to see that there are processes. And there's two basic kinds of conflict. There's cooperative, and then there's competitive. Competitive is what we do on the field. That's where we're trying to beat them. Cooperative is when we're conflicting within our organization, and we want to win, not a win-lose. Okay? Got it? So in a cooperative type of conflict, you amplify the similarities. So say that Ken and I are having a disagreement on something. When we look at what do we have in common and we build on that, that is a cooperative type of conflict because we can build on the things we have in common, right? But when we're competitive over here, what we're doing is we minimize those similarities. We're helpful in cooperative. We have poor communication, right? We're open, we're trusting, trust, big word, right? We're friendly, we're emphasizing our common interest. And then there's this power. Think about the sports teams that you guys work with. Don't they exploit the power? Where you guys have strength on this team, we're going to exploit that in order to beat the other team. Now, in your internal team, if you exploit power, you know what happens? You got this power imbalance, you impede trust. Impede being able to create a solution that is a win-win because it's a win-lose when we look at conflict that way. So these are how you know what the process is. Are we being cooperative or being competitive when we have conflict within our team? Okay? Just kind of a framework to look at it. Then we have outcomes. We not only have a process for how we do conflict, but we can see what the outcome is. And you'll know which one you're using of those processes, whether you have a constructive or destructive outcome. And you can start looking at trends and say, where can we do this better, right? If you have a constructive conflict, this is a win-win. Things are built up, there is forward progress, and things grow. Okay? Anybody ever had a conflict with somebody and you're like, we worked this out well, and you actually have a stronger bond than you did before? Think about when was our country the most united after 9/11, right? We had a conflict that was us against them, not us against us. We won't even get into what's happening in our country right now. It's us against us, right? You see it. But when we have constructive conflict, when we band together to come up with a win-win, it's us, right? It's those two Belgian horses pulling together on the same sled. A destructive outcome is where things are tear down, there's lack of progress, and things actually die. That's where you have turnover on your, that's where you have people not caring, disengagement, all of that kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about? You can look back over conflict, and I challenge you guys, look at your own conflict, right? I have to look back over the relationships that I've had my entire life and go, I had a lot of this because I wanted to win, right? How can I move to this? And that's by doing that cooperative conflict style rather than the competitive conflict style. So just understanding that, right? Then trust, right? He was talking about trust. I got to tell you, most conflicts, truly, have an issue with trust. You started to talk about this because you called it trust willingness and trusting, right? I actually frame it slightly differently than that, but it's the same thing. I have an ability to trust somebody else, and then there's trustworthiness. Those are two discrete facets of trust, right? A lot of people don't understand that. So in our organizations, we can have this I don't trust that person, even if they're trustworthy. Okay? You may need to work on that. You might need to work on your ability to trust, getting on the back of the tightroper, right? The example that I'll give on that, we were down in the Cayman Islands about 10 years ago, and my brother and sister-in-law went up on parasailing right before my sister and I went up. And there, it's like a machine. They like bring the boat in, but they don't slow it down all the way because the parasail stays out there. Two people get out, the other two people get into the harness. And so my brother and sister-in-law came out, my sister and I get in, and he hooks me in. He goes over to my sister, and obviously I'm trusting, aren't I? Because I'm getting into this parasail and I'm about ready to go up over the shark-infested water in the Cayman Islands. And I look over at him, so I'm trusting, okay? But there's this extra cable that's hanging there that's not hooked in. And so just as I said, hey, does this need to be hooked in? And you know what I did? I took action. because it didn't make sense to me that there was a cable that was just floating loose. I hooked it. Boom, the boat took off and we went up. I would have fallen out. So I trusted, but were they trustworthy? So you have to understand there's two pieces to that equation. If you're having trouble trusting somebody, you might need to look at, why do I have trouble trusting, okay? I will tell you always, though, you need to be trustworthy. Even if somebody doesn't trust you and you feel like they're doubting you and you still have to look in the mirror at the end of the day. You still have to look back over your career and who you are later on and go, I was always trustworthy, whether they trusted me or not. That's on you. You own that piece, right? You understand that. The other thing he talked about is integrity. I love studying words. Did you know that integrity and integrate are from the same word? Think about it. A team that has integrity is integrated, but you're also integrated, right? That means that you're the same person at home as you are at work, as you are when you're off work, because you're integrated. You're a person of integrity. Now, does that mean that we have as familial relationships at home as we do at work? Not necessarily, but you don't change the essence of who you are when you show up at work. You're a person of integrity, right? That's what that means. You're integrated. You don't have to fake being somebody that you're not, okay? Trust, big thing. So how you're wired, we're back to my acronym, owning conflict, right? How you're wired matters greatly. And Becca kind of talked about that. That is kind of what my specialty is now. I use a highly statistically valid device and I measure people. I kind of joke when I'm like traveling, and I travel all over the country and work with lots of big organizations and stuff. And people will ask me, like when you're on the plane, and I'm the person that's just like, don't talk to me. I am that person. But I love talking to people. I genuinely do. But most of the time, I'm so tired at the end of doing training and everything else. I just kind of be in my own space. But when people ask me what I do, I usually say, oh, I'm a profiler. And that is what I do. I'm a profiler. Like it is kind of fun to see people's reactions to that because it's hilarious. But I can tell you how you are wired matters greatly for how you're going to show up in conflict, okay? When I say wiring, I'm talking about a person's traits. We're talking about that neural wiring that happens in your brain. It is nature and nurture, okay? There's been debates for millennia about, is it mostly DNA or is it the environment you grew up in? I can tell you it's almost 50-50. Latest science says about 47% of who you become behaviorally, your traits, is based on your biology, okay? When you're born, about 47% of you is already locked and loaded, so there's that. But then about 53% of you is because of that environment that you grow up in, right? Those repetitive things that happen that cause those neural wirings to happen in your brain. Most of us are locked and loaded by the age of 16, okay? Now, your prefrontal cortex isn't developed until your mid to late 20s, depending on male, female, right? But we are who we are. By the age of 16, we just become refined versions of ourselves. And your traits determine how you behaviorally navigate the world, okay? So how do you think that's going to affect conflict? Greatly, is it not? I'm going to do an exercise. You guys all should have a little tablet, book, whatever. And if you could just take it out really quickly, I want you, and you should have a pen as well. Do we have time for this, Becca? Are we okay? Okay, perfect. It's only going to take a few seconds to do this, but here's what I want you to do. Okay, super simple instructions, okay? I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I want you to write your name as many times as you can, okay? On your mark, get set, go. Okay, time. How many you got? 17, 16, 11, 9, 8, 6. Oh, man, 4, 12 and a half. I love it. 8, 10, 22, 20, 6, 22. 15? Okay. I got some 22s over here. You don't count because your pen died. We had a 6. Oh, your pen died. 6, 6. When you hear 22, what do you think? Okay. My 22 is over here. When you hear 6 or 7, what do you think? Oh, he has a long name. What else? Okay. You know what? Let's just do it again. Okay. We're going to do it again. Here's the instructions. Okay. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and I want you to write your name as many times as you can. On your mark, get set, put the pen in the other hand, go. Oh my God. Okay, time. Can I use yours as an example? Okay. Let's see. And how many did you have the first? Okay. Can we see? Right. What happened to his productivity? It decreased. Would you like to show up to work and have your work product be judged based on that? What? Right? You guys, let me see yours. Well, again, look what happened to the productivity. Do we see that? Right? What you guys just experienced is behavior modification. You guys understand that. You're all athletic trainers, right? Anybody in here ever broken their dominant writing hand? Okay? If you guys work with people who break things, right? You get better when you do it in a way that you were not naturally to do it, wired to do something. But the moment the cast comes off, you know what you do? You go right back to the way you're wired to do it. It's easy to see that when we're talking physical things, isn't it? Did you know that your brain is wired for your traits as well? So when we have people who are not doing things the way they're naturally wired to do it, it's like putting the pen in the other hand all of the time. Isn't that awkward? Right? Your productivity goes down, the quality goes down. It might improve a bit, but you feel awkward. Like, did you hear what happened in the room when I said, put the pen in the other hand? It was a collective, right? Like, it's uncomfortable to do things the way that we're not wired to do them. Every single person has a primary strength and weakness. Every single person does, right? And it's determined by your traits. In an organization or in a team, people are going to fill one of 3 primary strengths. You're either going to be the gas pedal, you're going to be the brake pedal, or you're going to be the glue. That's the way people are wired. And I know it's labeling and it's generalizing and all that other kind of stuff. But you see, we really do have that. And it's going to greatly impact your conflict style. And it's also going to greatly impact how you define resolution. Because it's not just about conflict, it's about conflict resolution, is it not? Right? So we got these 3 different types of people. We got those that I need to win. You know those people? That's your gas pedal, by the way. That's that. We're going to move things forward. Then we got the I need a solution, which I bet is a lot of people in this room, to be honest with you. You want to do the right thing, right? I need a solution. Then we got these people that I just need peace. Can't we all just grab hands and sing Kumbaya, right? They all exist. Your gas pedal, your I need to win, they're decisive and fearless. They can be bossy. Those are some big personalities, aren't they? They drive progress and innovation. Think those that play offense on a team, okay? Offense. They play offense because they want to move things forward. Then you got the I need a solution people. These are your rule followers, your risk-averse people. These people have a strong sense of right and wrong. Look at you're laughing. This is me, right? But they can be wet blankets. Because every time one of these people comes in and they're like, hey, I have this idea. And they're like, well, have you thought about this? And have you thought about that, right? Look at you're laughing because it's true. We know that, right? They keep us safe, though. They play defense, right? They're critical in a team. All of these members are critical in a team. But do you see if somebody's wired differently, could it cause conflict, right? Then we got these people that just want peace, right? These are just want no conflict, but they can be passive. And that's not necessarily the best thing, because how do we make progress if there's no conflict, right? We've already agreed on that. But I promise you, people will stick around. You'll have players, you'll have coaches, you'll have parents, you'll have vendors, you'll have whatever else because of these people. All are needed in a team. For what it's worth, these people are wired to conflict. Okay? I am literally both of those. Holy smokes. right? When I measure myself, I am both of those. So here's some practical suggestions. You talked about mentor, those things in your life that you look back. I had a mentor from the time I was 17 until I was 57. He passed away a few years ago, which kind of tells you how old I am, okay? And he used to say to me, Kim, you are such a fighter. And I'm like, yeah, what of it, right? Because I would go in and I'd fight and I'd stir things up, but I also made things happen, right? But he'd say, you know what? You can choose to fight for, or you can choose to fight against. What I would tell you, if you are wired to be a fighter or you have fighters on your team, this is an incredible framework to think about. Because if you're fighting for, I promise you, it's always in the best interest of serving that team, serving that player. I'm fighting for something as opposed to fighting against something. It's a framework. It's an outlook. Think about it that way, right? And it's super effective when it's empowered by BFM, biggest fan mentality, okay? I work with a ton of Fortune 50 and 100 companies, and I cannot tell you the amount of time I go into a company and everybody is throwing people under the bus. Ever happen on your teams? Right? Well, when we have a biggest fan mentality, this is what that looks like. If Becca were to come to me and say, oh my gosh, I'm super frustrated with Joe because Joe, da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, whoa, but that has got to be super frustrating. I understand that. I feel for you. You know, I'm a big fan of Joe, and I know Joe would really want to help solve this. So how can I help? All you have to do, I'm a big fan of, right? When we have a biggest fan mentality in our team, does that mean we like everybody all the time? No, but it means I see value in that person, right? When your team does it, it disperses the leadership target, because how often do people complain about the leaders? Right? But when a leader says, I am a big fan of so-and-so, now we're all the target up here as leaders, right? It promotes a trusted environment that says, I got your back, right? Because if you come to me about Joe or somebody comes to me about you, you know I'm going to say, I got this person's back. And then it says around here, we attack a problem, not a person. How powerful is that, right? Biggest fan mentality. And is it easy to not do that when somebody else is complaining about people? Just don't lower yourself to that level. And if you don't do it, you're going to build silos and it's going to impede trust in your team. Okay? Choose to have a biggest fan mentality, right? And you know what the basic magic to having all of this happen? Lean in with curiosity. Okay? Lean in with curiosity. Curiosity is the best thing on the planet. Because if you can even use this phrase, the narrative I'm telling myself, okay? When you have a boss or you have somebody who may be parallel to you, but they're questioning what you're doing, conflict, right? I've made a suggestion and now they're coming back and they're undermining me. That may be what you're thinking. Or they're working against me or whatever else. If you approach that person, kind of where you said somebody asked the question, you asked the question, when do we let it go? When do I, deal with it? And when do I actually escalate something? Well, my answer to that question is if it's for the good of the team to lean into it with curiosity, I would always do that. If it's me and I'm a little butthurt, that's a whole different thing, right? But when we lean in with curiosity, I can go to somebody and say, the narrative I'm telling myself is that you don't trust that I've actually taken this into consideration. Help me understand where you're coming from. Do you know how powerful that is? Because do you feel threatened when I come to you and say, the narrative I'm telling myself is that you don't trust me, help me understand? That's not threatening to anybody. It's a great way to navigate, right? I would tell you, pay attention to those conflict styles. Are you being cooperative or are you being competitive? We want to compete against them, but not against us. What are the outcome trends? Is it building things up, right? Is it constructive, or are we tearing things down and we got high turnover and things are negative, right? Pay attention to the wiring of people because it matters greatly, right? Here's one of my other favorite things. Once you understand how people are wired, exploit their strengths rather than marginally improve weaknesses. There is a whole lot in Western culture specifically. It's probably all around the world, but I mostly work in Western culture, right? Where we say we have to have a performance improvement plan. Don't hear me saying people don't need to be aware of what their weaknesses are and accommodate for them. But if our entire job as leaders is to try to fix people's weaknesses, maybe we could shift the focus a bit and say, but where's the rest of the team strong where they're not? And now the whole truly is greater than the sum of the parts because we're exploiting people's strengths, right? Rather than marginally improving those weaknesses. And then pay attention to where there's a breakdown of trust. Is it that I'm having trouble trusting even though the team is trustworthy? Or are there some elements of untrustworthiness and we need to attack that, right? And then fight for rather than fight against. And then empower a biggest fan mentality. That's what I got for you guys. Kind of quick there. I know it was a little quick. I hope that was okay.
It was great. Who has a question? Is that on? Sorry, anyone have questions? Andrew's yelling at me.
So how do you have conflict with someone who avoids conflict at all costs?
I think when somebody avoids, so the I need peace person, I'm married to that person, by the way.
Me too.
Okay. So I have to understand where he's coming from and leverage the fact that he doesn't like the conflict. So can I come at it so that I have a need right now. I'm feeling not heard. I'm feeling that there's an unresolved issue. And the narrative I'm telling myself is that this is not as big a deal to you as it is to me. Can you help me understand, one, where I maybe have blown this out of proportion, or two, how can I help you understand how important this is to me, right? You own it. If you own it, it allows you to step into. And then if they still don't want to, I think at some point you got to start saying, am I making something up and I want to deal with an issue that probably isn't an issue to them, or do they just want to keep stuffing it under the rug? Then I will tell you, I am a huge fan of therapy. Huge fan. Before you need it. Before you need it. You guys are strength conditioning people, right? When do you go to somebody to get strong? Before you need it. Why wouldn't you go and get into a counseling situation where somebody who's going to help you with mental performance before you need it? So I'm just telling you, I'm a huge advocate of that. But I think it's a matter of owning the narrative to help them understand you're not trying to attack them. There's an issue that's keeping us from being as close as we could be, whether it's a teammate, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a parent-child, whatever it is. I want to fix this. This is that important to me. But the narrative I'm telling myself is that this is bigger to me than it is to you. Help me understand. That's not very threatening when we do it that way. And if they still don't want to engage, you might need to look at, is it really worth engaging or not? Evaluate that. Great question. Anybody else?
I'll share one that we got online.
Okay.
What is the biggest mistake or a few mistakes that people make when trying to resolve conflict on a team?
There's a few, right? But to me, so that question, I don't know if you heard the what's one of the biggest mistakes in trying to resolve conflict? I think not understanding what the outcome is, right? What are we trying to accomplish in this conflict? Am I trying to just be right and be heard? Am I trying to win? Or am I trying to just make the conflict go away? So when we understand how the person on the other side is wired, when I understand how I am wired, then we can attack the problem, not the person, right? So I think it's understanding what is the outcome that I want to achieve here. Anytime you're entering into conflict, you have to understand what that outcome is. And I think Ken was so spot on with this. We put our egos aside that says, I may need to feel like I need to be right, but the reality is what's in the best interest of the player, of the team? That's going to allow me to check my ego. And I have to do that hard work and be willing to say, I'm probably contributing to this conflict. How can I get my ego out of the way so I can say, what is the desired outcome? Well, whatever is best for the player. Okay. And now we can have, somebody has to be the grown-up in the room. I mean, that's the truth, right?
I have one more question unless somebody here has an additional question. Okay. Should all issues be handled behind closed doors? Is there ever a good reason to resolve conflict in front of the team?
So that goes back to what our outlook on conflict is, right? I'm not afraid of conflict, but I'm wired for conflict, right? But conflicting well in a leader, one of my core values, and I believe this to be true because I do leadership development. That's what I do. One of your jobs as a leader is, in my opinion, your most important job as a leader is to be developing other leaders, right? That's your job. And if conflicting well in front of other people helps develop that leadership, and we do it well where we're attacking a problem, not a person, then I would say, let's do it. But if there's sensitive subjects, I think you have to understand who's on the other side. So if I'm having conflict with somebody who doesn't enjoy conflict, so I got that I need peace person, or that person who is not in a good frame of mind and maybe they're triggered, to expose them in that moment, that's not respectful. Are you tracking with me? So we kind of have to understand the context of the conflict in the moment. So that's not a direct answer, but I think there's a lot of things you have to take into consideration. But I think when and Ken, you can answer this for me. I mean, there has to have been times where you guys have had conflict in your leadership, but when you handle it well in front of others, is it not a powerful example for other people to say, and here's how we conflict well? Conflict isn't bad. It's actually a good thing when we do it well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it steps back to awareness for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like awareness is the hardest thing to develop in people. I grew up on a ranch in New Mexico, and you walked around like that cow might kick me, that horse might run me over, might get bit by a snake. You know, there's a lot of awareness things. If I tell people I don't have many strengths, but one of them is my awareness and my feel around people, because I've seen a lot of leaders walk in and like, hey, we're going to Kim's point, we're going to solve this problem and we're going to solve it at a lot of cost. And I think that's when, you got to get everybody, be aware of how everybody's taking something, and then how you're coming out, and then step into that space with we're going to solve the problem mentality. And, if you see that it didn't go well, I think this is the most powerful thing, and this is the hardest thing for most people to get. Be vulnerable if you created a mess, and clean that mess up.
Mm-hmm.
Go get that person one-on-one if you see, because I love to go 2-on-1 or sometimes 1-on-1. I pull them off and I'll really challenge and like, hey, look, maybe I came off wrong there. Help me out. I'm sorry about that. Just take full ownership, and then you can create something really cool. I love to work in the space of creation. What can I create with this person?
Yeah, and that goes back to that kind of leaning in with curiosity. What could I have done better in this situation? And am I willing to be vulnerable enough to say, how could I have shown up better for you? I didn't handle that well. Can I have a do-over? Like, that's powerful stuff right there when you say, I didn't handle it well. Can I have a do-over, right? All right. If, just out of curiosity, I don't know, I'm totally going off script here. If anybody wants to do a free assessment of your team, this is going to allow you to give me information to be able to measure your team, a trait survey. I will do that for free because I love Becca. For you, it's just a little team diagnostic that I can do to give you 7 work-related traits for your team members if you're interested in that. I hope that's okay that I did that. And if anybody wants it, I have magnets here on mindset, elite versus an average mindset. So if one of those, you are welcome to what that looks like. Thank you guys so much.